We are back. Welcome back, everyone. As you can see here, we have our keynote speaker. I am very proud to present to you all Kat Casey, our keynote, who will be presenting a talk entitled Becoming Ironman Esquire, How the Human-Centered AI Revolution Makes Legal Professionals More Important, Not Less. Kat, take it away.
All right, well, thank you, Anand. And thank you, everyone, for joining me this morning bright and early. I think that this is a topic that is, frankly, on the top of everyone's mind. So who the heck am I and why can I talk about this? I'm the Chief Growth Officer for a company called Reveal, a leading AI company. But I've been talking about the AI revolution, the human-centered AI revolution, for about 18 years, both at KPMG and PwC. And I'm kind of a thought leader that is very focused on how to future-proof you and legal as this entire transformation happens. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. In the last 6 months, we have had a transformative thing happen. Basically, AI went mainstream, and it's only been 6 months. I mean, the day that will live in infamy was November 30th, 2022. And what happened? Well, generative AI entered the stage. And what is generative AI? Well, it's easy to use on my iPhone, AI that can make stuff. Pretty, I don't know, mind-blowing, if you will. Oops, my slides aren't working now. I don't know what's going on. Hold on, there we go. So what happened? What caused this generative AI flip? Well, it went mainstream. Right now, my nephew, who's 8, my grandfather, who's 88, my neighbor, my cousin, the lady at the grocery store, some random guy that saw me in the airport lounge, are all talking about generative AI. And why is that interesting? Why is this different from AI? We've been talking about AI and legal probably at least since De Silva Moore, which was what, 2007, 8, 9, right? So what has caused the change? Well, it's been the human-centered approach, the ability to easily access it. With just the click of a mouse, you can get into OpenAI and start typing a prompt. You can say, hey, will you write me a motion? It might not be great, but it'll get you part of the way there. You can say, hey, if you're in marketing, write me a marketing campaign. If you are writing an invitation for a party, you can say, write me an invitation for a party. If you are really bold, you can say, write me a biblical verse in the style of New King James explaining how to remove a peanut butter sandwich from a VCR. Yes, that is my favorite one. What's compelling is that very easily, in an intuitive fashion, you as a non-technologist, I'm going to assume most of us aren't, you as a non-technologist can access the transformative power of AI. I like to say that if any of us knew how complicated, powerful, and algorithmically driven and all the lambda calculus and you name it behind Google, we'd be afraid to type in that little Google box. But we aren't afraid because it's the way humans communicate. And I look at the generative AI revolution as that next iterative step, meaning that this AI lets a non-technologist, maybe someone who decided at 12 or 13 that I'm good at math, I'm good at science, I'm definitely not talking about myself, but I totally am, and that if I became a doctor and something went wrong, it was much messier than if I became a lawyer and could appeal. Well, what does that mean for a lot of us that are in legal? We may have started moving away from STEM and leaning more into, logic, theory, the written word. What does that mean? We have become masters at our area of expertise, masters at M&A or litigation or antitrust, whatever the case may be, but not necessarily masters of math and science, which means that all this powerful AI may have been a little threatening because the early iterations of AI weren't built with an average human in mind. They were built to be powerful. They kind of felt like a black box. They were challenging to use. Now that's not so much the case. And now ChatGPT is just one piece of the action. There's also an entire universe of image generation, which for us as legal professionals means, all right, great, there's cool pictures people can make. Oh, but wait, wasn't there just a deep fake of Pope John Paul? No, not what Pope is it now? I don't even know which Pope it is, but he was in a puffer jacket looking really fly with a hip drip or whatever the kids are saying these days. But for 3 days, people were running with a story that was real. If a highly recognizable world leader can have generative AI create a deep fake of them, what does that mean for evidence, right? So there are some questions that are being raised. But all of this is just the beginning. If you look at generative AI, it is creating this wealth of potential evidence that is concerning, risky, uncertain. If you look at the pictures on the right, not one of those is me. Those were all generated from an algorithm that was fed 4 or 5 selfies. If you can make pictures that even me as an individual aren't really recognizing, it's kind of a scary time. So what do we have going on? Well, according to McKinsey, we have an AI revolution that could translate into between $3 and $4.4 trillion of additional revenue in the economy. But some of the folks who are most at risk are actually people that have a higher volume of education, folks that have gone to those specialized higher level, doctorate level, Juris Doctorate level training. So what are we all going to do? This moment in time, this inflection point is a inspiring, exciting, terrifying, horrifying, you name it. If it has ing, it probably has been said about the generative AI revolution. So what does it mean? Well, let's go back to the future. Let's get in our Wayback Machine and let's think about why and what and how has AI evolved in legal? I mean, at the very beginning of it, the language of business today is data, and we are drowning in it. You know, from the number of tweets and texts and Skypes and Signal and WhatsApp and WeChat and you name it, there's probably a new application that's been built in the time that I've been talking and it's only been 6 minutes. So there's a universe of data. And as with the evolution for email and electronic evidence in the early 2000s with the 2006 and then subsequent 2015 federal rule, civil procedure amendments, we as an industry have had to evolve. And so how is this all going to tie back to AI? Well, when you look at, say, this morning, so I woke up and then I checked my cell phone and I looked at social media. I sent a text message. I opened WhatsApp because I have some colleagues that are in Europe. I checked Slack. I sent 3 messages there. I shared a doc that was actually in SharePoint that I had in the cloud with O365. And then I went into LinkedIn and I shared a post and then I hyperlinked it to this. And then if you wanted to track Kat, the custodian, the bad actor, not that I would ever do anything wrong, I promise, connecting the dots across these threads of information as just a human being would be, well, frankly, it'd be impossible. If I was talking about a key case that I was working on with the case team in Slack, email, text, Signal, hopefully not on social media, but you never know these days, and that became relevant to a case, a linear approach, a straight ahead approach to connecting the dots and finding the information just wouldn't work. So as this kind of data explosion has happened, us as legal professionals, we have one big job, just the facts, man. We're trying to find out the who, what, when, where, and why of our cases. In order to do that, we are having to wade through more and more and more noise. And it's not even just a question about efficiency or saving dollars and cents. We could have 1,000 attorneys sitting in a basement coding somewhere. Yes, I'm having flashbacks to the early days of, Intel AMD cases and all of that, the massive dockeries. There's just not enough hours in the day. And even if there were enough hours in the day, it's impossible to kind of connect those dots. And so people are having to think of new ways to identify and uncover information. So take a step back. This is just a slide that I made, goodness, a year ago. It's outdated, but just look at all these evidence sources. So if I was doing due diligence for a second request, if I was doing an insider threat analysis, if I was doing an EEOC investigation or just a straight up litigation, I would need to find a way to uncover this information in a vast and disparate sea of data. And this vast and disparate sea is just getting deeper and murkier. We've got 10 billion global smartphone users. There are, I believe, 1.3 billion iPhones that are the current model out there right now. And let me tell you, of those 1.3 billion, I don't know, several hundred million have already downloaded the ChatGPT app. So if we think of this in the lens of, oh my goodness, we have generative AI creating a universe of data. We have all of these applications that are on all these mobile phones. People are using shadow IT. Oh my goodness, how am I going to figure it all out? Well, that's when you start to understand how this technology can be transformative and helpful. And it's not just human generated information. The universe of tech-enabled things, ring lights, smart doorbells, smart cars. I don't know. I think a fair number of toys are web-enabled, Fitbits, you name it. Those are also adding an entire layer, entire universe of data. So as legal professionals, this transformative moment of finding evidence is only accelerating. The virtualization that happened with, the recent pandemic has dramatically accelerated the adoption of user-friendly applications. So everything from, Slack and Zoom, which we use every day, all day, 24/7, to all these different business functional applications that have a chat function because you want to collaborate in real time. All of this is just creating a universe rife with, filled with, brimming with new data that is potentially relevant for a whole host of cases. And I know it's really easy to think, hey, I'm not someone who is doing commercial litigation, or hey, I'm not doing criminal cases. So why would I need to really pay attention to ephemeral messaging, self-destructing messaging? Or why would I need to pay attention to social media? I mean, this is just a list of a couple of the types of applications that are out there. And as professionals, we need to sort of think about how do we connect the dots, not just of this data, but of perhaps prompts that people are putting into ChatGPT, or prompts people are putting into images, or how are we going to validate that an image, a piece of evidence under the FRE, is actually authentic? How are we going to ensure that, when there is a piece of visual evidence, that our mind doesn't just immediately say it's real, because it could have been augmented, it could have been artificially created, it could have been straight up hallucinated by DALL-E or Midjourney or Lensa. I mean, the first step is include this universe of data, right? So start thinking about it, start scoping it, but that's not the only thing. If we look at cases today, again, this is probably a little bit old. The average cost per case just of discovery, and we're not talking due diligence for second request, it's in the millions. And that is ever expanding as the universe of data gives. The pressures are not changing. The pressures from, in terms of time constraints, in terms of high visibility, in terms of the risk of not finding that smoking gun or needle in the haystack, or whatever the case may be, it's big and getting bigger. So let me take a breath. Something has to give. And that's where the moral of the story comes in. These pressures around us, the adoption of generative AI, the volume, variety, velocity of data, the use of all of this information, that is driving everyone to legal innovation. And it's driving us all into this kind of fourth industrial revolution. And that's why a lot of us are kind of feeling a little uncomfortable. When there is a major change in how the workforce, how the universe interacts, it can be deeply uncomfortable. I think Plato and Socrates were arguing that the written word would cause people to become less intelligent because they wouldn't have to memorize stuff. When Gutenberg's printing press came out, people were concerned that you would no longer have to handwrite stuff, so you may lose insight and intellect. When the Industrial Revolution happened, people were concerned, and these are valid concerns. As we move into this fourth industrial revolution, which is the intersection of humans and machines, it can feel a little daunting. But here's the good thing. If we look at the AI today, it's not necessarily what John McCarthy thought of. He initially, the godfather of AI, talked about machines that could replace human cognition, machines instead of humans. And what we've seen in the 50 plus, I think 60 plus years at this point, is that machines absent humans, they can do some good stuff, but machines with humans, amplifying human intelligence, designed with a human-centered design for humans to use to answer human questions in a way that amplifies the human mind. Now that's mind-blowing. And that's where the kind of the thesis of my story comes in. A lot of times when we're thinking of the AI revolution, even the term, it's a little like militaristic, right? We're thinking of the Terminator coming down and Skynet, they're taking all of our jobs. Suddenly we're all going to be lawyers holding a sign in a threadbare Brooks Brothers suit saying we'll litigate for food, while all of the lawyers' offices all up and down K Street and Madison Avenue are filled with robot lawyers. And that's just not going to be the case, thank goodness. Instead, it's going to be a lot more like Tony Stark. Now, maybe not everyone's a Marvel hero fan, but I can break it down for you. Tony Stark is a brilliant human. What does he have? An awesome toy. He has this technology, this suit, right? And the suit, when Tony's not using it, it's gathering dust in a closet somewhere. But then when Tony has a need for it, he presses a button, the technology comes to him, brings him better information, amplifies his decisions, supercharges him, and lets him be able to have that David versus Goliath or Tony versus Hulk moment. The technology that we're seeing today, especially for legal, is much more Tony Stark than Terminator, in the sense that it's not doing stuff automatically without human input. It's not replacing human cognition. Instead, it is bubbling up information so that you as the legal mind can make better decisions, more informed decisions with information more quickly. So the thesis that machines will replace humans, not true. The reality, though, is those of us that embrace technology, that become our own Tony Stark, our own Iron Man, absolutely are going to eat everyone else's lunch, because the reality is man or machine underperforms compared to man plus machine every day, all day, no matter what. So let's talk a little bit about this idea. So initially, the universe had this idea of artificial intelligence. Brains replaced machines, right? What's evolved over the last 60 years is the realization that there are things that machines can do well. Pattern recognition, cutting out noise, connecting the dots, and things it can't do as well. The big one among that is really that perception, interpretation, that legal brain, the thing we went to law school for, that ability to interpret and to kind of do these higher level tasks. Machines aren't and probably never will be very good at that. But where the magic comes into play is when you have humans and machines working in concert, doing the things that they're very good at. So the machine can connect the dots and let you know the sentiment of a communication, or it can let you know who's talking to who about what, or the key concepts that are being discussed. But then you as a human can interpret that. What does that mean in terms of the legal matter at issue? What does that mean in terms of, the questions I want to ask? And as we kind of look at this and re-evolve how we think about AI in general, maybe we should call it IA, intelligence amplified, I don't know. But as we think about this evolution from Terminator to Tony Stark, that's a lot less frightening. That doesn't mean that tasks won't be automated. That doesn't mean that certain roles might be replaced, but they're not going to be replaced by a robot or a cyborg. They're going to be replaced by someone who can embrace the technology. Maybe someone who can do prompt engineering with ChatGPT. Maybe someone who can, interpret the outputs of these legal AI tools that, thankfully, there's been legal AI evolving for at least a decade now. So these aren't new and unproven. Now, normally what I would do is if I had a group of folks here, I'd say, hey, are you using AI? Because I think it's really funny when no one raises their hand. But the reality is every single one of us on the phone today, on the platform today, is using AI. From your GPS to Facebook to, frankly, if you go on Amazon, when it makes a recommendation of, hey, you were looking at dog bones, do you want to look at dog treats? Or you were looking at pink shoes, do you want to look at pink socks, right? Every single one of us is benefiting from using AI today. This AI is helping us to make better decisions with better information. So it's not that foreign. And the nice thing is, when it came to early iterations of AI back in 2009 and whatever, it was complicated. You had to have a linguist. You had to know a little bit of lambda calculus. It was a black box and it was unknown. Today, we are learning from all of these consumer grade applications of AI. If we knew how complicated Google was, we might be afraid to use it. Well, because we don't think about all of that algorithmically. We Google 18 ways to Sunday. So we're bringing a lot of this iPhone easiness into legal AI. And what does that mean for all of us? Well, much like with the generative AI revolution, we are eliminating the barriers for non-technologists to gain the benefit from this technology. Now, we're part of an evolution, right? Initially, there was just machine learning, kind of connecting the dots, deep learning, general artificial intelligence. The reality is, though, when we look at legal, we're somewhere between machine learning and deep learning. We're not quite, I mean, no one's at general artificial intelligence yet, but we're not as far ahead. The good thing for all of us is the technology that most of us are going to have access to, and I'll talk about that a little bit, it's proven. It's been validated for decades. It's not as big and scary as we may think. And I know we're in the middle of this crazy hype curve. I would imagine we are at that peak of inflated expectations today because literally every conversation, every article, every person, all we can think about every second of the day seems to be AI. But the reality is, if we scale back from the hype, there's a wide number of applications that are already using machine learning and AI today that we as legal professionals can tap into to supercharge us, from analyzing contracts to doing predictive legal analytics to obviously discovery does a ton of it, even e-billing. So there's a lot of different technology out there that's looking to connect the dots, make you more efficient and better able to leverage technology. A couple of the areas that I really like to look at are, active learning. So if you're doing discovery review, you can toggle on a switch and it's going to start bubbling up more relevant information. You can do investigative analytics. What does that mean? I don't know what's going on in my case at all in the investigation. Who matters? What concept matters? Well, I can use these different dashboards to figure out what's going on. Some people are also using AI for predictive compliance, identifying anomalous behavior that may indicate someone's a potential insider threat, or maybe using AI models to see if someone's exerting pressure or using so inappropriate language. There's also task automation, anomaly detection, contract analytics. There's an entire universe, and that's also beginning to incorporate in just different types of generative AI. And the generative AI is now taking baby steps. I'd say the areas that I've really seen it evolving would be contract analytics, so maybe clause generation, as well as a way to refine how people are doing information retrieval. And it's earlier stages there, but basically, if you look at generative AI like ChatGPT, say I wanted to find a recipe, right? I'm not a great cook, but say I wanted to bake some salmon. If I was to Google that, I would have to read 87 people's life story with 14 paragraphs each just to get to the ingredients. I can just type into ChatGPT, hey, give me a recipe, and it will give me a recipe. Well, what does that mean for legal? Well, if I want to know who has a negative sentiment talking about oil and gas futures in the Enron data set, I could either run a bunch of searches and a bunch of AI and, parse through individual documents, or maybe I can ask that question to a large language model. We're not quite there yet, but that's kind of what the next iteration looks like. So for us as legal professionals, this is a whole universe of ways that we can run our practice more efficiently, ways that we can uncover the key facts, who, what, when, where, why, more effectively, that we can conduct due diligence more quickly, that we can understand our risk more fulsomely. So all great stuff. So why aren't we using it? Why have we had these different types of AI at our fingertips at least for 15 years? And there's a lot of narratives that we're telling ourselves. I think a big one is that it's too hard, or that AI is only for certain people, that I've got to be a technologist, that there's certain things I need to know, that it's expensive, that only certain cases work for it. And let me tell you, it's all BS. And it's not BS in the sense that we're lying to ourselves. It's in the sense that reflects older generation AI. AI used to be expensive. It used to require millions of documents to start connecting the dots. You used to need to have a team of specialized, trained AI people. There used to be an AI workflow. I understand why all of us were like, heck no, I'm not doing it. And honestly, if you used AI 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, you probably have PTSD from it and don't want to use it. Yeah, it's a trouble in paradise. But here's the good thing. AI has evolved. Much like our idea has evolved from artificial intelligence to augmented intelligence, the way that we present and engage with AI has changed. It's gone from human replacing to human centric, meaning designed to solve human problems, easy for humans to use, even non-technologists. I mean, let me tell you, my study of existential philosophy did not equip me for lambda calculus, right? So it's evolved to technology that is consumer grade, that is easier to use. And the AI itself is more powerful because it's been developed over the past couple of decades, which means you can find and connect the dots in smaller data sets. The net is that AI is becoming something that, instead of opting in to use only in certain special, specific, unique unicorn cases, almost into something where you really need a reason to opt out of using it, i.e. it should be your default. If you want to evolve and keep connecting the dots and stay ahead of the competition, you're going to have to start embracing these different types of technologies to make yourself more efficient. And people are doing it already. So we got to kind of quit telling ourselves these myths. And we need to understand, as legal minds, we are not Luddites. We are not avoiding tech because we think it's bad and scary. We are people that have spent decades being trained to identify risk, issue spot, and to avoid it. So it's almost like we have to evolve ourselves a little bit and understand, what about the technology do we find concerning? What about the technology do we find worrisome? And it breaks down to this handful of things. There's concern about, am I going to be able to explain it and use it effectively? Is there a legal risk to using it? Are there ethical considerations? And the ethical considerations are no joke. But the reality is, I think the ability to opt out of using AI has passed. Think of it this way. A lot of people thought that the dot-com bubble would be the end of the internet, right? So 2000, 2001, right? When everything .com was going IPO, it was ridiculous and crazy and all of that sort of stuff. But the underlying technology was so transformative that not only did email become ubiquitous, but web-based everything became ubiquitous. It became a major mechanism of all of our normal tasks. I'm looking at AI, especially with the crazy adoption, the adoption rate we're seeing now. I mean, it makes the internet adoption of earlier kind of look like child's play. So the reality is, we are going to evolve into a place where AI is baked into everything we do, and there's not a chance to opt out. Meaning, if you're playing ostrich now, you're going to end up behind the curve. So what the heck does this mean? Feels like a lot of who cares, so what, not it, I don't know. Well, as legal professionals, we've got an ethical duty of technical competence. And it's not just the model rules, although that's a big one. I was up in, I think it was in New Zealand, and they were talking about it as well. Almost every single jurisdiction has some sort of obligation for technical competence. It doesn't mean you need to know how to code and lambda calculus and yada, yada, yada. No, but what it does mean is that as legal professionals, we've got an obligation to understand the technology, understand when technology is necessary to handle an issue, be able to issue spot challenges around technology. Because the interesting thing is, we're talking a lot about generative AI, and maybe you say, hey, it's a risk I don't want to take. Screw it, not going to mess with it. Fine. But remember when I said my 8-year-old nephew, my 88-year-old grandfather, my neighbor, my cousin, the guy across from me at the lounge, you name it, everyone's using it. Well, who is that everyone? Your clients, right? And so as you start to see your clients using generative AI, suddenly there's legal questions around IP, who owns it, or around, is there some sort of audit or evidentiary trail? We're going to have to start thinking about the legal challenges and ramifications of this AI revolution, because it's impacting our clients and every different type of legal that we might be involved with. And going back to the fear, when it comes to AI, there's a lot of fear and desire. I mentioned earlier that there was a McKinsey study, I think came out 2 or 3 days ago, that $4.4 trillion of revenue is going to be generated by generative AI. But the flip side of that coin was that something like 56% of roles that require a doctorate, Juris Doctorate level of training are going to be at risk at some level of automation. So what does that mean? Of the millions of lawyers out there, we may not have to worry about our jobs being replaced, but we're going to have to worry about them being evolved, right? And so understanding these skills, becoming your own Ironman, is going to be the way that you kind of future-proof your career, future-proof yourself. So should we be afraid? Should we be running for the hills? Should we be dusting off the Brooks Brothers suit, writing our little sign, we'll litigate for food, hoping for the best? I'd say no. But now is the moment. Now is the moment that you start learning about, educating yourself about this technology, because there's an entire generation of folks that are technology native, right? So they weren't, I was 15, 16, 17 when I got my first laptop. I think my nephew was 3 or 4 when he was on the iPad. So we have an entire generation of folks that are going to be aging into our areas of practice that have grown up with apps and HCAI and you name it, that are tech fluent. So those of us that are already established in our career, now's the time to start learning about this technology, to start building our Ironman suit, to start looking for ways that we can optimize and supercharge ourselves so that we don't get left behind by the folks that are able to jump in with both feet right into using all of this great technology. And fear and desire is natural, but adaptation matters. If we look at the multiple industrial revolutions, did people become less intelligent after the written word? I'd like to think not. Did the printing press make people unable to research? I'd like to think not. Did the internet make people stupid? Occasionally, one might say possibly if you look at TikTok, but the reality is it created a universe of data at our fingertips. And now with the AI revolution, we're able to cut through the volume, variety, velocity, the noise of data around us to start getting to facts. And there's risks, there's challenges, but now's the time to really be looking at the opportunity. It's a balance of fear and desire. Well, I've got a lot of desire to amplify myself, to use technology as a force multiplier. And, this was before the HCAI revolution, that millions of jobs are going to be created by AI. And I would say that number is probably 2 or 3 or 4-fold now. So today's the time to start evaluating, what's my practice area? If I work in IP, is there an AI tool that can let me look for prior work? If I work in employment law, is there something that I can use to identify anomalous problematic behavior? If I work in antitrust, can I use an AI model to identify, collusive behavior, or use it for money laundering or FCPA? If I'm on the transactional side, can I look for anomalous clauses or clauses that have been triggered? Or can I look at a way to, update a mass group of clauses using AI technology? The answer to all that is yes. There are tools and technologies out there. And, you don't have to start by jumping in with both feet. It's simple. Befriend a dork. I volunteer. My contact info will be at the end. Read the periodicals. Legal Tech News has actually been really wonderful. They have a new editor, Stephanie Wilkins, who has been pumping out a wealth of information about HCAI. Get certified. There's different tools out there. So if you are on the transactional side, maybe look at, Raven or Luminance or Abriva, any of those contract analytic tools. Talk with the company. I'm sure there's a certification, or at least they'll give you a demo. On the discovery side, obviously my company, there's a universe of technology and tools out there. Ask questions. Don't go it alone, especially with the velocity that we're moving at today. I'm having trouble keeping up, and all I do all day is talk about, read about, write about this stuff. So find someone that is interested in Web3, someone that is interested in generative AI, someone that's interested in straight up machine learning and traditional AI, and make them part of your network. Stay curious, stay communicating, stay involved with them. So what does the future hold? I think a lot of us kind of come here for that. The reality is, I don't know, but I know it's going to be transformatively impacted by AI. And what do I mean by that? Well, Google's a verb now. What are you doing? I'm going to Google something. I have found that I'm not Googling anymore. I am ChatGPTing, and that's happened in 6 months. So in 6 months, something I've done for 20 years has evolved. I found a better way to cut through the noise using technology at my fingertips. Does that mean ChatGPT is taking over the world? No. But what I think that means is more advanced large language model AI-powered solutions that cut through noise are evolving how we retrieve information. And if it's doing that in our private life, it's going to do that in our professional life. So what I recommend is start playing with this technology. Get familiar with it. Learn about prompt engineering. You can't break it. It's a very low risk level. Like, if you don't want to ask it about work product because, hey, the Avianca case was a little scary where a lawyer Googled ChatGPT'd stuff and then posted or added it to a motion and didn't validate it and got in trouble. Well, don't do that, but maybe look up a recipe, or maybe look up, instead of Googling a movie, ChatGPT it. Get yourself familiar with the mechanism, the how you do it. I feel it's making a move away from Boolean search to more free-form search using LLM. So start playing with the technology because it's going to be transformative in its impact. And don't play ostrich. The reality is this technology is becoming a need to have, not a nice to have. Again, go back to my morning. How many different information sources did I touch before I got out of bed? 10, right? If you want to connect the dots on a bad actor, on a potential custodian, on litigation, on due diligence, you need a way to connect the dots that's beyond human cognition. I would have trouble following, an email about fraud that then became a signal, ephemeral message about fraud that then became a conversation that was on a voicemail that then became, boom, 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 boom. In order to connect those dots, I need technology as my force multiplier. I need it to augment my intelligence. So the future is AI as a default, not AI as a maybe kind of I might try it. And hopefully, the pattern that we're seeing of technology becoming more human-centric, more designed for whether you're a technologist or someone who chose the brilliant course of studying existential philosophy because so useful, that no matter what your technology acumen, you can gain the force multiplying power of AI. So the future is AI-enabled, but human-centered AI, AI designed to be accessible, approachable, easy to use for the average person. So, I see a future that's more Tony Stark, not so much Terminator. I don't foresee you walking down K Street holding a sign saying, "We'll draft a contract for food." But I do see a scenario where people that refuse to adapt and adopt will fall behind. And now's the time to make that pivot. We're seeing it with IKEA offering AI training. And no, I know we don't work at IKEA, but that is a employer of, hundreds of thousands of people. So look at the world around you upskilling around technology. Look at the world around you incorporating more and more AI. Think back to that slide at the beginning when I asked if anyone was using AI. I bet you if I had polled this group, half of people would have, sheepishly put their hand up and half of that you wouldn't have, when the reality is every single person has AI baked into everything from their GPS to their camera, to their Ring, to their, Facebook, Amazon, you name it. The same thing is going to happen with the technology. So prepare yourself, stay curious, keep digging in, and, be excited for a future that is Tony Stark and not the Terminator. That is going to make you supercharged, not you replaced. But remember, if you are fighting or head-to-head with someone who's already made the approach and the embrace of becoming Ironman, they're going to have a leg up on you. So become Ironman sooner, or woman, Esquire, than later. Now I've got about 5 minutes left. If there's anyone that has a question, please do chime in. I think that this is a really interesting time for everyone, and feel free if you have questions and maybe you're nervous to communicate them, check with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to email me. That the reality is you don't need to go it alone. So.
Kat, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it. As Kat just said, we are opening this up to questions. I'm going to, as Kevin and Daniel on the Inside Practice team, solicit questions from the group, and I will do so here at this point as well. That was very thoughtful. I think there's going to be a lot of questions. A question that came to mind for me, let me just tee up one as we collect questions from the group, is the following, and that is, obviously, in this world of Ironman Esquire, each individual attorney or paralegal or other legal professional is going to be able to be much more productive, right, using all of these tools. Is there a world here, as a lot of industry prognosticators have speculated, that law firms can address a much larger segment of the population, where today I think vast majority of America is priced out of hiring a lawyer, even a local lawyer, even if you're middle class or upper middle class. I wonder whether, in this new world of Ironman Esquire, you'll get just regular people being able to afford legal services. Is that where this might be going?
I think 1,000%. One of the most exciting things about AI is that it can bridge the justice gap. I think about it with the lens of discovery. It used to be only the $1 million at risk or the hundreds of $1 million at risk case could afford to use AI. As the cost has gone down and a lot of companies just bake it in, even a smaller divorce case or a small interpersonal dispute can benefit from connecting the dots with AI. I also think that we're not there yet, but Do Not Pay tried to build a kind of a LLM powered solution that would allow AI plus a human to represent themselves in court. There's some ethical considerations there, but we're thinking about that. How do we expand the universe of access to legal? And not even just in the lens of US based. There's entire countries where only a handful of people can access this. And so the nice thing is, especially with large language models, they are by nature multilingual. So there's an ability to bring this to a wide swath of folks who maybe wouldn't have had access before. So there's ethical concerns, there's some challenges, but people are looking at it today, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, I love that, and I love where this could potentially go. The questions are starting to roll in. I want to give the group some time for a break here, so I'm going to ask one, maybe two questions here. I'm going to pick them off the top. The first one, and this is from Damien Reel. Hi, Damien. Good to see you in. Damien asks, under the hourly model, the, quote, slowest lawyer wins the race. How do we bring along lawyers who don't, quote, want to be Ironman Esquire to benefit their clients and the profession? What's your take on that kind of disconnect? Yeah.
Clients are demanding it. So I used to run Gibson Dunn and Crutcher's global e-discovery program a couple of years ago. And even then I had large insurance providers asking me, how are you leveraging AI? And then they were applying AI to years of billables. Why did this second request have 4 partners and 37 associates, and this one had 1 partner and 5? Like, they were analyzing it, normalizing it, and creating their use of AI was making them more informed buyers. And so as clients are more informed, they're going to exert pressure on the law firms to be more competitive. And so the slowest lawyer might win the race to bonus, but they're not going to be sticky with their clients. And so what I foresee is a push away from hourly to AFAs that are probably, outcome based or unit based. And then also just competition for those best clients, where you have to differentiate yourself based on, I am more efficient, my outcomes are better. Will it be immediate? No, but it's been going on in the background for a couple of years now. And I think we're going to only see more of it.
I appreciate that. The questions are rolling in. I'm going to ask one more kind of rapid fire here. You are obviously very much in the e-discovery space. You've spent a lot of time in your career in the e-discovery space. Can you give us some details or some explanation on how the latest technology that you've just described will affect the e-discovery landscape?
100%. So it goes back to eliminating noise. So it used to be I would Google something, I would have to read a whole narrative. It would be a lot of like hunting and picking. Now, when I have a question and if I apply it to a large language model, because it's got hundreds of millions of data points, it's been able to cut through the noise and point me in the right direction more quickly. So what might that look like? Maybe it's a middleware layer above sentiment analysis, social network analysis, concept searching, and all that is just pointing you into the key facts that then you import into those sort of platforms, right? And so I almost see it as a layer further above that lets you just start picking out those key facts that you then investigate with.
Yeah, I'm going to ask one last question here. I appreciate you rolling with the punches here, Kat.
Always.
And this is a really it's a really complex question. This is from Stephanie Gudos. I really like this question a lot. And it is, I'm just going to read it verbatim. And it is the following. What do you perceive as the main reservations or concerns that law firms might have about adopting Gen AI technology? And how does this interplay with the evolving expectations of their clients? And this kind of shows where Stephanie's going with this. How will this change the billable model?
So the fear's a couplefold. One, truth lies in hallucination. When generative AI doesn't know an answer, it makes it up. We saw that with the Avianca case where a junior associate just copy and pasted. That kind of points to the whole augmented intelligence thing, meaning you have to use your brain still. You can't just copy and paste. So there's a fear of the efficacy, right? There's a fear that junior associates won't learn the certain skills they need. Flip side, though, is I am vastly more efficient when I use Gen AI. I can connect the dots more quickly. I can structure stuff more quickly. My output is often better. Well, if we go back to Damien's thing, slowest lawyer wins the race. What does that mean if I am vastly more efficient and my outcomes are better, but I'm being compensated on an hourly model? So I think it's going to look at more of an AFA. We have to shift away from the billable hour. And that goes to Alana's question. I've seen a variety of them. It can be my whole litigation portfolio is going to be X, or this case is going to be X, or this outcome is going to be X. That's something we have to think through But like, the law firms are not illogical to be nervous. There's risk around ethics that are being worked through. There's risk around efficiency that are being worked through. But our clients, as Stephanie pointed to, are going to drag us kicking and screaming to being more efficient with better outcomes. So we have to start digging into it and learning about it now.
And of course, we'll get to that that idea around ethics and risk and all of that in panel number 4 at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. So, we will dig into those very daunting issues. Kat, this was a very thoughtful keynote. I really appreciate it. Thanks again, Kat. This was really enjoyable.